The Essex seaside city of Southend has a curious origin in its name. You would expect it to be on the southernmost tip of England, but a quick glance at a map reveals that this is far from the case. Rather, the name refers to the southern end of Prittlewell, a former civil parish and the original settlement in the area, with roots in the Roman occupation. The name Prittlewell is of Saxon origin and was a fairly major settlement. Indeed, some evidence of the Saxon habitation remains. A 10th or 11th century arch is visible in one wall of St Mary's Church. It has long been considered to be the remains of the first Anglo-Saxon chapel on this site. In 2003, on nearby Priory Crescent, archaeologists from the Museum of London Archaeology excavated an entire prince's burial chamber, complete with a rich assortment of exotic grave goods, from a Mediterranean copper alloy basin to garnets which are probably Indian or Sri Lankan. Radiocarbon dating from a drinking horn revealed a burial date of between 580 and 605 AD, making it the earliest Anglo-Saxon Christian burial ever discovered. Priory Park, which borders this incredible site, also has a rich and lengthy Christian past. Prittlewell Priory, from which the park takes its name, dates to 1110, during the reign of King Henry I. Prittlewell was owned and managed by the Clunic order, which was founded in the Abbey of Cluny, Burgundy, in 910. They were a mostly silent order, living in a complete seclusion from the rest of the world. So adverse to speaking were the Clunics that they developed a basic form of sign language to communicate with one another. However, despite the appearance of total tranquility at Prittlewell Priory, its walls hold a violent history. Prittlewell was the daughter priory of St Pancras in Lewes, Sussex. As such, its priors would be appointed from there, with the king accepting the nomination of each subsequent prior. In 1311, William de Overnat was appointed as prior of Prittlewell. 3 years into his position, however, William was found guilty of inappropriate behaviour during a visit to London. In response, the prior of St Pancras requested that he be replaced. However, the king did not accept this proposal. While this dispute was ongoing, another man, Adam de Osgobedi, was appointed keeper of the priory in order to keep it in good running order. A prolonged conflict ensued between the two priories, with William attempting to take the priory by force on 2 occasions. By 1321, the prior of St Pancras had exhausted his patience and sent 2 monks accompanied by their own armed forces to Prittlewell. They ambushed the priory as William was taking mass, forcefully striking him over the head and dragging him out of the building. He later died of his wounds. After the dissolution of the monasteries under Henry VIII, the priory and its grounds passed between numerous private landowners. Under the ownership of Richard Rich, all of the buildings, with the exception of the refectory, cellar, and the 14th century prior's chamber, were pulled down. The last family to live in the priory were the 19th century Scrattons. They made many alterations to the already heavily modified building, including a parlour and a library. They also constructed a large walled garden over the monks' burial ground. Perhaps this was the one area they shouldn't have disturbed. As you may already have assumed, Prittlewell Priory and the surrounding grounds hold a plethora of supernatural tales. The most widely discussed is, unsurprisingly, the apparition of a monk, who is often sighted on the path leading to the original cloisters and the now demolished Minstrel's Gallery. There are numerous legends attached to this classic spectre, A popular tale surrounds a monk falling in love with a local girl and breaking his vow of chastity. After the monastic authorities caught wind of the affair, the monk was executed and the girl imprisoned in the priory. However, some versions of the story suggest that the monk was killed for practicing black magic. Others believe that the phantom monk is actually the spirit of the rebellious Prior William, eternally refusing to surrender his position to Lewis. Muddying the waters further is a 1960s archaeological dig, which uncovered a peculiar burial.
Quite a violent atmosphere in the priory, and in the 1960s there was an excavation in the priory grounds, and the archaeologists uncovered some burial places of what they assumed were monks or priors, and one of the monks had been buried face downwards.
Which means?
Which means he was buried facing hell.
Oh, crikey.
Now, this in Middle Ages parlance was usually indicative of somebody who'd committed some sort of misdemeanour. And it's said...
Are these the remains of the lovesick monk who was put to death? Or is there another tragic narrative attached to them, last discussed by mouths which spoke centuries ago, of which we will now never hear? The spectral monk has also been sighted near the ponds at the other side of the park, which were originally fished by Cluniacs all those years ago. Supposedly, the squawking of wildfowl heralds the ghost's presence. The fish pond has also been associated with a phantom bride who drowned there, although the origin of this small piece of folklore has not been determined. Several hauntings at Prittlewell surround the private owners from the 16th century onwards. One story tells of a resident who cut his own throat so severely that he nearly severed his own head. His semi-decapitated apparition is another figure who is said to roam the grounds. Within the priory itself, several witnesses have reported the sound of children playing and, rather eerily, giggling. Is it possible that these are the Scratton children? For them, the historic building and gardens must have been like one giant playground. Some of the Scratton children even wrote about the ghost stories in their diaries. Another mysterious audible phenomenon recounted in the park in recent years is a chorus of onward Christian soldiers heard late at night. With countless overlapping and interlinking stories residually collected over many centuries, I think it's ample time to find out if any of them are more than just legend. I was trying to get away from the noise of the traffic, but I've arrived here at Prittlewell on a rather pleasant Tuesday evening, and this is the Saxon burial, which I thought I'd just stop off at before heading into the park over there. It's not marked, not signposted in any way. The only reason I know that that mound is it is because of Google Maps. So I've now arrived at the park, and I wanted to get here while it was still daylight this time, just because this is such a large area that I'm going to be investigating today, and just wanted everyone who's watching to have an idea of, the size of the park. That's the priory down there, and yeah, kind of get their bearings a little bit. So I'm going to head over towards the fish ponds now. Passing what is known as Duck Island for obvious purposes. It's supposed to be the screeching of wildfowl from that island that signals whenever a monk is present here. I don't know how many birds need to be screeching, but there's certainly a few chirping right now. Strange to think that these ponds have been here for, well, probably well over 1,000 years at this point, and that the monks fished them. But of course now they're just modern housing right next door. And we're now approaching the priory itself. Just through these lovely trellises and nice gardens here. And here we have the walled garden, built over the monk's burial ground. And these are some of the newer additions to the property by the Saxon family. Still in keeping though with that origin. Got the Norman archway there. Having a seat here by the bandstand, and it's really starting to quiet down in the park now. So unlike all these normal people here, I'm gonna wait till it gets dark and I'm gonna go hunting for ghosts. See you soon. Heard a splash there. But assuming it's a fish. Nearly pooed myself there because someone came round the path, but just a person, not a ghost. It's peaceful but also eerie. Let's proceed. There's some wildfowl calling for you. Mosquitoes are everywhere. Let's go down to the water over here. Jesus Christ. That scared the life out of me. I'm assuming that was a bird of some sort. over the other side now. Done a full circuit of the lake now. I think it's time to head on to the priory itself. Just approaching the exterior. Oh, that scared life out of me. And now, moving into the walled garden. Right. Really, I can't be sure that there isn't someone in here already. Because there was a couple snogging in one of the back benches last time I was here, which is why I left so suddenly. But I don't think there's anyone here now. Expecting to see the figure walking along one of these pathways at any moment. I do feel kind of a chill down my spine, actually. Ugh. Really am a bit creeped out, actually. Now, this water feature here really gave me the willies the last time I saw it. It's like this weird old lion head, and then these two fish. It's a little bit creepy. I really thought I saw someone there. Or was just a shadow? God, I really wish I could describe what these real shivers running down my spine. Whew. Never had that on any of the investigations so far. I feels like someone walked over my grave or something. God, look at the size of these moths. This is freaky. I think that's going to conclude us for tonight. The Priory and expansive surrounding area of the park have a very complex atmosphere. As night fell and the local population slowly trickled out of the grounds, I felt another presence emerging. It didn't feel like the presence of a singular being or entity, but rather the centuries of history that this land holds. Perhaps it was just my extensive research and subsequent awareness of the history of the area that led to this sensation, but I'm not so sure. There were several anomalous happenings over the course of the investigation. When I was walking near the Priory building itself, I heard what sounded like the voices of children playing. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it, but then I realised that I hadn't heard or seen another person in the park for quite some time. It was past most children's bedtime. I thought back to the history of generations of Scratton children playing throughout the building and grounds. Could I have tuned in to some long-forgotten energy echo, briefly slipped into another time? Or were a few living kids just mucking about late at night? Unfortunately, the likely answer is the latter. While walking the path around the fish ponds, I heard what I can only describe as something heavy hitting the water. It almost sounded like a body. However, I think the most likely explanation here is that it was just a frightened duck who had been gobbling down a little too much bread. Still, it's easy to understand how rumours about a ghostly drowned bride could be sustained by encounters such as this. Although not really a tangible piece of evidence, I had an intensely fearful response to walking around the walled garden. I very literally felt shivers down my spine and goosebumps all up my arms and legs. I felt certain that somebody else was present, watching me, following me. There is a reported phenomenon circulated amongst paranormal communities that there is an intense change in the atmosphere before a paranormal event occurs. Now, while it could very easily be argued that this change in atmosphere and subsequent happening is merely a result of an overactive imagination, I now understand what this feels like. I experienced it during those terrifying moments. Is there a possibility that the rapid development of society, industry and technology have made us lose touch with another sense? A forgotten awareness for which we have lost the need for, as we are no longer hunter-gatherers fighting for survival? Was my body and mind trying to deliver a message that something intelligent really was following me along those desolate, empty garden pathways? Perhaps it's an evolutionary fear response, and a rational one at that. A vast open space in the dark leaves the prey vulnerable on all sides to something that wishes to eat it. Whatever the case, I didn't witness anything tangible during tonight's investigation. Certainly no unequivocal evidence. However, for every location I investigate, I always leave with the intense gut feeling that there is something out there, and that feeling is not unsubstantiated. We know now that there are a small quantity of brain cells in the gut, but beyond this, instinct is what protected our ancestors, and as a result, we are alive to contemplate such mysterious questions today. There is something out there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.